People say the old rail junction outside North Platte, Nebraska, is nothing more than a graveyard for steel now. Rusted tracks, broken signals, and weeds swallowing what used to be one of the busiest switching yards in the Midwest. What they never tell you is that some shifts there never end. My name is Daniel Hayes. A few months ago, I took a night shift job as the station master at Platte Tower, a lonely signal tower sitting miles outside the city. The reason was simple: money. Night shifts paid nearly double, and the job description made it sound easy. Monitor the tracks, check the signals, and report any problems. Most nights were quiet. Too quiet. On my first week, at exactly 2:11 a.m., everything changed. The inside of the tower smelled like hot wiring, machine oil, and dust that had probably been there since the 70s. Outside the reinforced windows, the Nebraska fields were drowned in fog. Old yellow floodlights glowed like dim moons floating in the mist. Almost no trains used this section anymore. My monitors showed the status of 8 separate tracks running through the yard. Every one of them was dark and inactive, until suddenly, one signal flashed red. Track 7. I frowned and leaned closer to the screen. That couldn't be right. Track 7 had been permanently closed after a derailment back in 1986. Nothing had run on it since. The rails themselves were rusted, almost black. But the monitor blinked again. Then I noticed something outside the window. Far down the yard, through the fog, a faint yellow light flickered. Slow, rhythmic. Thump, thump, like a heartbeat. I grabbed the radio. "Control, this is Daniel at Platte Tower. I'm getting a manual override on track 7. Can you confirm?" Only static answered me. Then a voice came through. Dry, rough, like gravel sliding across metal. "Daniel, the 2:45 is arriving early. Open the signal." My blood ran cold. There was no 2:45 train scheduled. Not here, not anywhere on this line. I slowly turned toward the window. Through the fog, about 200 yards away, someone was standing on track 7. A man. He wore an old railroad uniform, long coat, brass buttons, and a faded conductor's cap that looked like it belonged in a museum. But his face wasn't there. Where eyes and a mouth should be, there was only smooth, pale skin, like melted wax stretched over a skull. And that same yellow light was glowing faintly from beneath it. The figure began walking toward the tower. Slowly. His boots made no sound on the gravel. My heart started pounding. I rushed to the heavy steel door of the booth and locked it. The key slipped from my hand and clattered onto the floor. I dropped under the desk and stared at the thin gap beneath the door. The hallway lights outside had gone dark. Then, a yellow glow slowly began leaking under the door. The handle turned, slowly, deliberately. Something slid under the door and stopped a few inches from my face. A piece of paper, old, yellowed, smelling like soot. My shaking hand picked it up. Written across it in uneven handwriting were the words, "You're in my seat, Daniel." I looked up at the security monitor showing the hallway. It was empty, completely empty. But when I looked back down, the note was still there, and behind my chair, someone was breathing. I didn't turn around. The air inside the tower suddenly dropped to freezing. My breath turned to white fog in front of me. The radio on my desk clicked on again by itself. But this time, it wasn't one voice, it was dozens. Men, women, children, all crying, all begging. "Daniel, don't let it leave. "Please stop the train! Don't let the 245 go!" Then the floor started shaking. At first it was subtle, then it became a deep vibration that rattled the monitors on the wall. I slowly crawled up and looked out the window. The fog outside was glowing now. Track 7, the rusted steel rails were shining like molten metal. Bright yellow energy ran along them like electricity. Then I saw the light, a massive searchlight cutting through the fog from the far end of the yard. And behind it, a train, an enormous 1920s steam locomotive barreling toward the tower. But it wasn't burning coal. The smoke pouring from its chimney glowed the same sickly yellow as the faceless man's skin. The whistle screamed, so loud the coffee mug on my desk shattered into pieces. The train was moving far too fast. If it hit the curve ahead, it would slam straight into the fuel tanks beside the yard. The explosion would level half of North Platte. I turned toward the switchboard. There was only one way to stop it. The manual rail switch for track 7. If I pulled it, the train would divert onto a deadline. But something told me that wasn't the real choice. My hand hovered over the lever. Then the steel door behind me didn't open, it melted. The metal sagged and ran downward like black tar. Standing in the hallway was the faceless conductor. Up close, he looked even worse. His limbs were too long, his fingers bent in too many places, and in his hand he held an old silver ticket puncher. "The line is closed, Daniel." The voice no longer came from the radio, it came from everywhere. "The cargo is restless." Behind him in the hallway were dozens of pale figures, ghostly shapes wearing the clothes of railroad workers, travelers, and farmers from another century. Their bodies flickered like weak flames. They weren't passengers, they were fuel. "The engine needs another seat filled," the conductor rasped. Outside, the locomotive screamed as it approached the curve. My hand gripped the lever. "Why me?" I whispered. The conductor leaned closer. "Because you watched. In this yard, no one looks at the tracks after 2 in the morning. But you did." His silver puncher clicked softly. "You will punch their tickets." The train was seconds away. If I pulled the lever, the yard would survive. If I didn't, the explosion would kill me and everyone nearby. "I'm not going with you," I said. The conductor tilted his head. Then he made a strange clicking sound. He was laughing. I pulled the lever. The rail switch slammed into place with a deafening metallic thud. Then, silence. The train sound vanished. The vibration stopped. The yellow light disappeared. Everything was still. Slowly, I turned toward the doorway. The conductor was still there, but his voice had changed. It sounded exactly like mine. "Good choice, Daniel." He pulled out a small ticket, pressed the puncher. Snap. "Now, look at your hands." I looked down. My skin was turning pale and waxy. Underneath it, my veins glowed with a dull yellow light. My fingers wouldn't leave the lever. The steel was spreading over my skin like liquid metal. "The yard doesn't hire station masters," he said. "It grows them." His face began to change. The smooth skin rippled, forming features, eyes, a nose, a mouth. My face. He placed the punched ticket in my shirt pocket. "I've been working this shift since 1949, he said quietly. "I've been waiting for someone brave enough to pull that lever." Then he walked away into the fog outside the tower. As he left, his body slowly turned solid and human, like a man finally escaping. Inside the tower, the walls began stretching. The monitors fused into one massive screen. Thousands of tiny images appeared on that screen. People walking beside railroad tracks, Cars stalled at crossings, lonely travelers in the night. Every single one of them felt connected to me. My hand burned. I looked down. The silver ticket puncher had grown out of my palm. The metal fused to my bones. Outside, the train whistle blew again, but this time, it came from inside my chest. I understood then. I wasn't Daniel Hayes anymore. I was the station. So if you're driving through Nebraska late at night and you see a slow, pulsing yellow light near the tracks, don't stop, don't look, because if you do, I'll have to punch your ticket, and the 2:45 train never reaches its destination. It just keeps collecting passengers.